Welcome to today's Explainer. Get ready because today we're diving into something absolutely crucial for anyone who leads, works with, or frankly, just exists within a team. We're talking about the deep, beating heart of organizational growth. To set the scene, I want you to picture two colleagues. Let's call them Arav and Mira. They're sitting on this sun-dappled terrace late in the afternoon. Mira just hung up this beautiful windchime made from old, slightly bent brass spoons, each one still perfectly capable of singing in the breeze. Arav shows up, armed with a notebook completely full of workshop scribbles and, a packet of dried mango slices. The vibe is playful but really grounded, because what we're about to explore with them isn't about the kind of frantic, disruptive movement that shakes up a workplace. It's about the kind of movement that deepens it. We're going to explore how organizations literally breathe.
Setting up that chime, Mira shares a really profound thought. She says, renewal, the kind that listens before it moves. And man, that beautifully establishes exactly what this explainer is about today. We are totally stepping away from that idea of aggressive, top-down, disruptive change. Instead, we're looking at deepening, listening, and really finding an organic rhythm in how our workplaces operate.
Okay, moving to Section 1, Tending the Garden, Rethinking Organizational Development.
Now, if you've ever felt like your company treats its problems like, a broken machine that just needs a quick whack with a wrench, this is absolutely going to resonate with you. Organizational development, or OD, is a planned, systemic effort to improve both effectiveness and well-being. It is definitely not a quick fix, and it's not a one-off seminar. Good OD honors both the structure of a company and its spirit. Going back to that garden metaphor we mentioned, if you want a truly healthy garden, you don't just aggressively yank out the weeds and call it a day. You've got to have patience. You nourish the roots, you check the quality of the soil, and you wait for the seasons to shift.
Now, looking at this comparison really hits the nail on the head as to why traditional OD so often falls flat. The old way, removing weeds and slapping on quick fixes, well, it deals entirely with surface symptoms. But the renewal way, nourishing roots through a systemic effort, that tackles the underlying health of the whole workplace. Arav actually shared a brilliant story from his notes about a mid-sized logistics firm that perfectly captures this exact shift in mindset.
So let's look at what happened at this logistics firm. They were really struggling. Their departments were totally siloed, and there was zero cross-functional trust. Now, usually a consultant comes in wielding this rigid toolkit and some massive restructuring plan, right? But this consultant, they came in and just asked questions. Through a really quiet, conversational diagnosis using interviews and surveys, they uncovered the root issue. So the action they took wasn't some huge reorganization. Instead, they set up storytelling circles, literally having employees from different departments sit together to openly share their personal frustrations and their aspirations. And the result? People started actually seeing each other as rhythms, not just rigid job titles. Collaboration skyrocketed, and turnaround times actually got faster. They basically shifted the workplace from a cold machine into a vibrant community.
All right, let's jump to Section 2, Rethinking Change Management. Relationships, not rollouts.
So we hear it all the time, right? People naturally resist change. But Mira noted something super crucial on that terrace. Change isn't resisted because it's inherently wrong. It's resisted because it's unfamiliar. People don't actually hate change. They just hate being changed without having a say in it. And that brings us to the ADKR model. Now, you might know it, but let's look at it through a totally new lens. Awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Arav views this not as some strict corporate checklist to force people through, but as a necessary rhythm. It's literally an emotional preparation rhythm. You can't just skip straight to ability if you haven't built awareness and desire first. You absolutely have to tune into the emotional rhythm of your team. Because when you skip that emotional prep, you end up treating change as a rollout. You might have flawless logic, but with zero emotional prep, you're just expecting people to blindly follow instructions. Mira actually remembered an internship where they brought in this new reporting system. The training? Top-notch. But nobody ever bothered to explain exactly why the change mattered. So everyone felt like robots, completely disconnected. Now, contrast that with change as a relationship. This leans heavily on communication, empathy, and constantly explaining the why. It's about leaders who actually listen and adapt along the way.
And resistance is not defiance, it's a signal. When an employee resists, they are basically communicating a very clear message. I'm afraid, I'm confused, I'm tired. Good managers, the ones who truly understand renewal, they respond to that signal with care, not with aggressive control.
Moving right along to Section 3, Building a Learning Organization. Growing in Soul. Because if you really want an environment that adapts through care and relationships, you need a culture built on relentless curiosity, a space that is continuously transforming itself at every single level. A true learning organization doesn't just shove training modules at people, it transforms by encouraging learning everywhere. It grows not just in size and revenue, but, well, in soul. It's an organization that actively listens. For example, Mira had a manager who encouraged her to keep a personal journal after every single project. And this wasn't some mandatory corporate homework. It was a personal ritual. By listening to herself through that journaling, she started seeing these incredible patterns in her own choices and strengths. That right there, that is learning at a soul level.
And we see this kind of soul growth in stories of co-creation all the time. Just take a look at these two examples. Arav remembered a team that was totally stuck thinking only senior staff could come up with innovations. So they introduced reverse mentoring, inviting junior employees to share their fresh ideas. Boom! Instantly shifted the culture from a rigid hierarchy straight into an open dialogue. Or take Mira's story of a bakery that came up with an annual theme called Flavors of Memory. That vision wasn't handed down by the CEO, it was co-created by every single employee. That's a shared vision built together through active listening.
And this whole philosophy leads into one of my absolute favorite concepts from their chat, the failure feast. Arav talked about this design firm that held these weekly gatherings, and instead of sweeping mistakes under the rug, teams would actually come together to openly feast on what didn't work, and more importantly, what they learned from it.
The failure feast is literally the ultimate antidote to a punitive culture. You know, the kind where mistakes are punished, hidden, and just deeply feared. By throwing a feast for failures, this design firm built a playful culture. The vibe wasn't punitive at all. Mistakes simply became shared stories, and those stories became seeds for future growth. Organizations that invest in that kind of reflection, they don't just grow their bottom line, they build massive, massive resilience.
Okay, Section 4, Integrated Tools for Renewal, Instruments with Intention.
So how do we actually operationalize all this? Well, Human Resource Development, or HRD, instruments are the tools we use to spark this growth. But they have to be deeply integrated with intention, not just scattered around haphazardly. Let's look at how this integration actually plays out in the real world. First up, training programs have got to link directly to strategy. Take a manufacturing unit that used a train-the-trainer model, having senior workers teach the juniors. That reinforced the seniors' expertise while simultaneously building a strong community. Second, appraisals must link to development. Arav recalled a manager who completely threw out standard ratings and just asked, "Tell me about a moment you felt proud this quarter." Wow, that completely shifts the vibe from harsh judgment to genuine reflection. And finally, coaching needs to link to culture. Mira had a mentor who flat out refused to just hand her the answers. Instead, she asked probing questions, guiding Mira to find her own rhythm.
And when we're talking about career planning and helping people actually envision their future, Arav brought up a tech firm that used what they called career canvases. These were these fantastic visual maps charting out an employee's aspirations, their skills, and what support they needed. It is such a beautiful reminder that an HR instrument should never ever just be a bureaucratic form you fill out and file away. It needs to be a living, breathing conversation.
All right, our final section, the practice of care, renewal in action.
Now, everything we've talked about sounds amazing in theory, but to put renewal into action, it has to be highly contextual. You absolutely have to respect the unique rhythm of the specific environment you're in. I mean, what works for a scrappy tech startup is definitely not going to fly in a bustling hospital. Take a look at these real-world examples. A school managed to completely shift from rote memorization to experiential learning simply by having teachers co-create the learning spaces alongside the students, a total mindset shift. Meanwhile, a textile unit introduced these simple 5-minute afternoon mindfulness breaks for workers to just pause, stretch, and breathe. And the result? Productivity stayed perfectly stable, but absenteeism completely plummeted. Both places achieved real renewal because they listened to their specific context before they tried to lead. So, the absolutely crucial point here is captured beautifully by the realization Arav and Mira had as that wind chime sang on the terrace. Rhythm is not speed. It is not about rushing, intervening, or trying to forcefully control the outcome. Rhythm is presence. It's about listening, reflecting, and truly honoring the natural seasons of growth. And renewal. Renewal isn't just about making changes. Renewal is about care.
As Mira so wisely pointed out, you need winter to prepare for spring. Organizations, much like nature, are entirely cyclical. They have seasons. They grow, they hit a plateau, they reflect, and then they regenerate in this continuous, beautiful cycle. You literally cannot be in a perpetual state of aggressive spring growth. You have to allow for the quiet winters of reflection.
So, as Arav and Mira closed their notebook, they left themselves with a few reflections, and I want to leave you with them today too. First, I want you to turn inward and ask yourself, what rhythms do I need? Take a second to evaluate your own pace. Are you rushing through things, or are you truly present?
Second, how do I respond to change? When something unfamiliar comes your way, do you view it merely as a rollout that you just have to survive, or do you see it as a relationship that you can actually nurture and shape?
And finally, how do I help others grow? Take this thought with you back to your workplace today. How can you replace control with care? And how will you help the people around you find their very own rhythm?